Introducing Golden State Republican Women President Janet Price.
Welcome, everybody. It's a very exciting time. This is our very first special speaker event of 2025, and what a year this is going to be. So we are so excited, especially to have the guests we have tonight. But I thank all of you for being with us. Those of you in Southern California, stay safe with this wind event, but we just are so happy that we can get together. And as you saw, we can also look forward to the inauguration watch party. And please look for everything there where you can register. It's going to be a great event. I want to thank my team for always doing a great job on these speaker series. And it will be Gretchen Cox, first vice president, and she always does programs, a great job there. We thank Nancy Wofford, who is third vice president, and she does the political events. And certainly our tech webmaster, and then her assistant that helps out beautifully, Sherry Gillis and Kaylee Komatsu. So it does take everybody together to put these as you see them and to present them, and we're so glad you're here. So I'm going to turn the evening now over to Gretchen Cox, who will introduce, or will welcome you also, but introduce tonight's guest. All right, thank you.
Thanks, President Janet. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year to all of you. It's so good to have you here. And as Janet said, for those of you who are in some sketchy areas of Southern California, just try to keep one eye on the news so you can pay attention to what's going on, but keep most of your attention focused here because this is what's important. Welcome and thank you for being here, as Janet said, to our very first special speaker event of 2025. It's been a few months since we last met, and I hope everybody had great holidays and a great new year in the meantime. But we're happy to be back together with you. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, as always, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. Number one, please make sure you are muted during the presentation tonight so that we don't accidentally become witness to whatever's going on in your background. The other thing is, remember that we would love you to all submit questions to our speaker, and you can do that by clicking on the chat button and then putting your question in the chat, and we will get to all of them tonight. So we'll have about hopefully 10 or 15 minutes or so for chat time. Okay, so that's it. And I want to remind you that it'll be myself and third vice president Nancy Wofford trading off asking the questions that you all submit. So please do that. I'm very happy tonight to get to introduce a gentleman I have met on a couple of occasions and had the pleasure of hearing speak. Senator Mike Morrell. He's a retired senator. Mr. Morrell is a California native. He graduated from the University of La Verne with a BA in business. He worked in the title industry and as a real estate broker after college, and eventually he opened his own businesses. I believe it was both a title business and a brokerage in the late 80s. So he is, as well as being an elected, he is a small businessman. Over the years, he's served on many community organizations and boards, including board of directors for the Building Association, the YMCA, the School of Business at UC Riverside, just to name a few. He started his career as an elected official in 2010 when he was elected to the California State Assembly, serving the San Bernardino County area in a special election. He was then elected to the state Senate in 2014, and he served there until 2020. Since then, he has continued his service on many boards and committees, and he even authored a book recently, and it is entitled The Road to Restoring the Family, leaving an inheritance to our children's children. And it really spells out a lot of his heartfelt feelings and philosophies on things that we can all do to be better citizens. And I did put a link at the very top of the chat if you're interested in checking out his book. Senator Morrell is one of two candidates now running for the position of chairperson of the California GOP as our current chair, Jessica Patterson, terms out. This election will be held in March at the California GOP convention in Sacramento. So we felt that since so many of our members are delegates and will be at this convention, it's important for you to have a chance to get to know the people that are running to replace Jessica. It is my pleasure now to welcome Senator Mike Morrell. Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for having me on. Totally grateful. Love it. Boy, I don't know where to start. I'm not a small business owner. I am 6'2", by the way, Gretchen. Kind of a dumb joke, but anyway. You know, in the beginning, so let me back up and kind of tell you my whole career. When I was 28 years old, or 25, Joni and I got married. I didn't want any kids, but then we had kids, and I ended up actually liking those little guys, right? So I took a class on the 7 deadly sins, like pride, greed, lust, avarice. And the one that really caught my attention was the word slothfulness. And I thought that was just being lazy, but what it means is spiritually lazy. It leads you into other things that can cause problems. And what it means is people do not ever come to a point where they ask the question, how did I get here on earth? And more importantly, for what is my purpose? What was I designed for? So that really interests me. And if you are slothful or were slothful, then that leads you to maybe, you know, the other 6 deadly sins is sort of what this class was. It was a 3-day class. And I liked it because one thing I've noticed over the years, there's a lot of people, and I'll refer to men because those are some of the guys I know who have had successful businesses. They made a lot of money. But you've heard this saying that sometimes when men get older who've been successful, they live quiet lives of desperation. That's even though they were successful, they're dying inside because they never fulfilled that purpose. So I really wanted to fulfill that purpose. And so one of the subtitle of the book is Leaving an Inheritance for our children's children. And that comes from the wisdom of Solomon, who says that's the duty of a father, is to leave an inheritance to our children's children. And that was sort of the thing that I discovered was sort of my life, why I'm here on earth. And I think the reason why is because I ended up really adoring my children. I didn't think I would get that excited when I was younger having kids, but I did. And leaving an inheritance goes beyond just money, the financial aspect, but it's morality, it's education, it's freedom. Just like my dad fought in World War II and got shot once, had malaria twice. He told me he was doing that for future generations. He said, I was doing that for you. And I said, but Dad, I wasn't born during World War II. He says, you don't get it. He says, that's what men do who love their country, you know? And so that really resonated with me. So all through my life, when I was younger, I wanted to know that everything I did was structured to try to make our country better, make my kids better, make our educational system better. So I got involved with a whole lot of different things within the community to do that. And so always focusing on, you know, what I can do as a father to make our country better for future generations. And so I opened some businesses, and then that led me into working with other business owners. And we started some actual ministries in the valley here, and that was fun. And then one day I went to a Republican meeting, and Solomon also says in the book of Proverbs that a fool who keeps silent will be considered wise. So I went to my first Republican meeting. I sat in the back of the room, And I kept my mouth shut because I knew nothing about politics back there. And that was in 1983 or 84. And, I wore a suit. So, I didn't look like a bum. But they were electing officers that night. So they started with the treasurer, then the secretary, then the vice president. And then when it was time to elect the president, somebody nominated me. And I ended up being president. The first time I ever walked in a political situation, I ended up being president of the Republican Club for the Inland Empire back then. And so, man, it's like I was thrown into the lion's den in water, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot of things I didn't know. They asked me if I wanted to go by Robert's Rules of Order, and I had never heard of Robert's Rules of Order. That's how naive I was. And it was quite embarrassing, to be honest with you, because I made some mistakes, but somehow they always worked out. I had asked, there was a congressman back in our area, I won't mention his name, because that's a lot of years ago, and he's passed on, but I invited him to speak to our club. So I announced that at the next meeting, and people kind of laughed at me. They said, this guy always, we've invited him, but he never shows up. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be made a fool of. So I called back to his office in DC, and this lady answered the phone, and I said, hey, we're canceling him. We don't want him to come. And she asked me why, and I explained to her what my fellow Republicans said. He never shows up. And this lady told me, he's coming. And I said, ma'am, no, you don't understand. I'm canceling. He is not coming. She says, well, we'll see about that. So then I get a call from Senator Jim Brulte, if you remember him, Senator Bill Leonard, all these senators. You never tell the congressman's wife that he can't come to your event. And so apparently that day they were having a staff meeting. So his wife was.
He did say he was having some power
Yes.
power issues out in that area, so hopefully we haven't lost him.
Yes, that was always the threat tonight, because the winds are horrific, and I know they are in the Inland Empire too, as well as here. So hopefully it will come back, because I find him so interesting. Oh, did we lose him?
No, he just shifted place on my screen.
Oh, did he? Well, I'm
Yeah.
seeing me. I'd rather see him.
Oh, now I think we lost him.
And we
I
lost him.
think so. I
We'll
think
let
so.
we'll let him
Give-
come back on.
Give him a
and-
minute.
Yeah, he probably went out and tried to get back in, so.
Right,
Here he is.
right.
He's coming back.
Okay, good. Because okay, now I can put my dog out here while nobody's looking, right?
Okay, I'm on my cell phone,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
but it's dark in the house.
Uh-oh.
Well, we can see you.
Okay.
You
So
lost all your power?
yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so we've got a flashlight, but hey. Anyway, so where I left off, it was just a coincidence, is that day there was a meeting and the congressman's wife was there, and she was the one who answered the phone, and she ended up telling her husband, you better get out to these meetings because you're getting a bad reputation. So it was kind of cool because everybody wondered how I got the congressman there, which was kind of fun. So that started my political career. I was baptized by fire, that's for sure. A lot of challenges. And so, but it really perked my interest because I learned a lot. And then where my journey took me, and I want to explain my journey because people ask me, what am I going to do if I elected to the party? I like to tell them a little bit about my past, because you can promise anything to people that you're going to save California. But I think a better key leading indicator is what have I accomplished in the past should give you sort of an indication what I'm going to do in the future. So in the meantime, have you guys heard of Hillsdale College?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Larry Arnn, the president, used to
I
live.
love him.
Yeah, he used to live right here in Southern California.
Teddy.
And so, yeah, Claremont Institute was a conservative-based think tank.
Oh,
So
wow.
I went to a business meeting one day. He was there. We got in a nice argument, and it's the only argument that I ever won on, And so, okay, my wife just brought in one of our camping gear, so hopefully you can see me better. Thank you. So
Oh, my-
anyway, one thing he said to me,
he said, Mike, he said, you know, the next battle may not be with guns and swords, but it's going to be the battle of ideas. He said, you need to educate yourself in these constitutional principles. So for the next 5 years, he was like my mentor. And I would study the Constitution, the Declaration, just a lot of things I learned. And so it was awesome. Our two boys ended up going to Hillsdale College. I ended up president of the Parents Association. And I was able to take the retention rate. When Dr. Arn got there, they were only retaining 73% of their students. I put a plan in together, and 5 years later, that Hillsdale was at retaining. They went from 73 to 90%, 93% retention rate. And the money we raised for the Parents Board was about 450%. It went up within about 6 years. So anyway, it was a great opportunity. David, our boy, ended up, thanks, hon, going from Hillsdale to Yale. And then he worked for Justice Clarence Thomas, which was kind of cool. And then he went to the White House and worked under Trump. And then he left there. He's in private practice. And a year ago, I asked him, if Trump wins the election, are you going to try to go back to the White House? He said, no way. He says, it's too tough. And I'm just not going to do it, because he said, when I left the White House, you've got people digging in your background. And the White House attorneys are the guys who get sued and usually end up in prison. And so they never caught anything. He had a clean bill of health, but 3 years he had people back, checking into his records and everything. So that was a little crazy. So anyway, make a long story short, you'll like this. I just talked to him today, as a matter of fact, and he's had 2 job interviews, and for the Trump administration. I said, I thought you didn't want to go back, and I love sort of his attitude. He says he doesn't want to get burned, but he likes playing close to the flames because it's exhilarating, to take chances in life. And I, as a father, I appreciate that he's leaving a job making this much money, and because he's one of the largest law firms in the world, and he's a partner, and he's going to go down and make kind of nothing, but he's ready to serve our country, and he's got a second win, and he's ready to do that. So anyway, so that I bragging about him. Another boy worked at the Hillsdale think tank in DC, which is called the Kirby Center. And then our daughter ended up a professor for political science, but then she ended up having kids, and 5 kids. So now she thinks her duty is to stay home and homeschool those kids. So we're proud of these guys, and I could go on, but anyway. So then, I had my business, and I got on the boards of like the building industry, which helped me understand why why housing has increased. It's because of government. All the permits you got to go through, the land use fees. In California, it takes 2.5. A builder buys a piece of land today, he's lucky to be able to start building his home in 2.5 years. And then it takes another year to get his home built. And we don't know what an economy is going to be like in 3 to 5 years. So anyway, our electricity is going back on, so that's a good thing. So, Joni, try to get me back on the computer here while I talk. So anyway, life proceeded and business was going well, and I thought, I'm going to try to run for politics because a couple of things. I want to do what I can to help my state of California, and more importantly, I thought, I want to show my kids that being in a job, and even though your job's going well, I'm willing to, and I never thought it was a sacrifice, but I wanted them to think it was, that I'm willing to forego a certain amount of pay and take less to be able to serve our state and our country. And again, the goal of that is to try to be a good example as a father. That's, it's not about your career, it's about your family and your country. So that's how I got into the Senate eventually. And then when I got out, I wrote the book, because one of the things to restoring America is restoring a family. And then I explained earlier in my speech here that the family book went really well. And I spoke to a lot of clubs, about 87 Republican clubs throughout California in the past year and a half. And I think that's why people have read that book. And I think it's because it's kind of a resume on Mike Morrell. And I believe that's one of the reasons people want me to run, is because they know what I believe. I mean, I've written it in black and white, you know, if they don't, they can read that book, and if they don't like what I believe, they don't have to vote for me. So that's kind of how I gave you my whole life story. Sorry to do that. But I just wanted to kind of lay the foundation so you understood my purpose in life is to leave an inheritance to our children's children, because just as my dad fought in World War II and left us a country where, you know, I didn't have to face any drag queen hours. That would have never happened when my dad was around. He would have went down to the school and removed those guys personally, right? And, you know, California used to be #1 in education, and America used to be #1 in the world. We're ranking really low. We're heading towards slouching towards a third world government in education. So it's just totally wrong. So we've got to get our education back, which I want to help do that in California, to give parents more of a school choice. And that would be a huge thing I'd like to do. And I think the time is right, because there's a movement. This is okay.
You'll have to excuse us tonight. We're having technical difficulties due to a major storming going on in Southern California.
It certainly is. And
Okay.
there we go. He's just keeps right on going. Love it. I can hear it right outside here too. His cell phone was doing fine, actually. I could hear him and see him. Who did we lose right there? Oh, that's Senator. Well, sometimes Wi-Fi will go out. Is he back?
I don't think so.
Oh, I thought I had heard his voice.
No, he's not back yet.
Okay. Well, Karen Contreras said it's blowing like a son of a gun out there. And she's right out there in the Inland Empire too. And
Do you want to talk about our breakfast that's coming up January 20th?
I am so excited. I would forget that we are on with the speaker. I don't want to get that excited, but it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And hopefully everybody who is on tonight will get a ticket and come up there, because this is the most memorable historical event of my lifetime. So I'm assuming all of your lifetime too. And to celebrate it together with like-minded women, that's what's wonderful about it. And I haven't been to Riley's farm before. Those of you who have, I've heard nothing but wonderful things about it.
Okay, here comes Mike again.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. I think
Great.
we're not going to try the computer anymore. We're just going to
Your
go.
phone's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, for your patience. That's a little nerve-wracking. So anyway, that's why I want to run. And I think there's a lot of things we can do that are just practical to move the ball down the field. Because I've spoken to a number of Republican clubs, as I mentioned earlier. And I asked them, has our party come to you and say, hey, will you help us? And the answer has been no. And so communication is the key to any relationship, right? And so I'd like to have regular meetings and see what the best practices are for each club. Tell us your top 2 things where you guys hit home runs with. And we try to incorporate some of those things and help other clubs. But one of the things I'd like, since communication, I believe in the Republican principles. I just think we do a terrible job and clearly communicating those things. But the reason communication is so important is Ronald Reagan was called the great communicator, remember? And he won 49 out of 50 states. The next best, or one of the better communicators in life was Sir Winston Churchill, who saved Europe, right? They were bombed 57 consecutive nights in the London Blitz. And he was able to communicate clearly and got the United States involved and you know, hit a home run. And then Abraham Lincoln too, remember, he lost his first race for Senate against Stephen Douglas, because Stephen Douglas made a better argument about slavery, saying, let's go to the 10th Amendment, let the states decide. Lincoln said, no, if slavery is wrong in one state, it's wrong in all the states. But he ended up losing that race, but he hung in there. He came back 2 years later, won the presidency. So all your greats know how to clearly communicate. And I love listening, or not listening, but reading some of their debates that they did, the language they used, and the same with Reagan. He always did things with he was very serious, but he did it with a nice demeanor, a smile, a wink, a nod of the head, and a joke here and there. So I just think we've got the messages that can win. And so another thing that I want to do is just simplify this. I don't think we've got 50 messages we can do. Gavin Newsom, one thing is he wants to Trump-proof California. We want to Gavin-proof California because he's got so much baggage and so many things. He inherited a $100 million budget surplus, and now he's 71 billion deficit. Not only that, he wants to make this a sanctuary state. So kids, before they even grow up, before they even know what they want to do, before they can even play in the streets, he wants to be able to use this as a state, a sanctuary state, so they can transition if they want. And you know, kids in the 3rd and 4th grade don't know what they want when they're in the 3rd and 4th grade. And then he wants to make it a sanctuary state for those who are here illegally and giving criminals a free pass with the system here. He was against Prop 36. So, I mean, he's got a lot of baggage. I think we just got to get better at communicating. And so that's the second thing I'd like to do is I would love it if every club would have a couple of media people who did social media to get out the word, as well as write op-eds, because there's a lot of local newspapers. There are smaller newspapers that'll allow you to write op-eds. And the reason why is right now we only have 3 people communicating throughout the state for the most part. And that's the pro tem of the Senate, the Assembly, and then the chair of the California Republican Party. Can you imagine we have almost 300 Republican clubs between Tea Parties, Golden State, Republican Federated, and the CRAs. If we only had 150 of those communicating to their million people in all these different districts, I just think we can hit a home run because we can win on communication. Let me give you 3 more things. And if I talk too fast, forgive me. But another thing that we can win on, and remember, we don't have to be identity politics because we're all created in God's image. People want the same thing, and they want to make money, right? And so the economy, remember what James Carville said. He was President Clinton's campaign manager, and he said, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, the economy, the economy, the economy. He even blames the Democrats for losing now because they took on social issues, and people want to talk about the economy. So we can do that. We can do that by showing you have to limit government's power. You can make a case on that on every industry, whether it's building, how government has messed it up. When in 1981, a married couple used to be able to buy a home for $31,000 in 1981. Today, the average age is 47 years old. And you can trace that all with government interference and how high they charge these fees, these building fees to get people homes. They 150 to 200,000 a lot before the builder even grades the lot. And that's not so in Texas. You can build a home in about 4 months. So the time value of money, you know, builders are flocking to Texas, and so are people from California. And when you take what government has done to the building business, I just want to say that's across the board. You can apply those same statistics and find out how the health association is going. I just spoke to the health underwriters. They've got terrible problems. People don't want to be a doctor anymore because you can make more money in less, in about 1/3 the time being an airplane pilot, right? Because of all the government health care, and then people with the lawsuits and all those types of things. These doctors do not want to have their own practice. What they want is they want to go work for a big company like Kaiser. So every industry, you can see how government, the expansion of the bureaucratic state has impeded business as well as us to earn a living. So that's the second thing we can compete on. Well, the third really. The first was Governor Newsom, Gavin-proof California. Number two, I mentioned education. Number three, the economy. And number four, and again, this goes across racial lines, demographic lines, neighborhoods. People, whether they're rich, poor, middle class, or upper middle class, they want safe neighborhoods for their kids. That's why Proposition 36 won overwhelmingly, which Gavin Newsom didn't like that, right? And because people were, 50 people would raid a store, you saw it on television. That's lawlessness, right? And so people want safe neighborhoods, just like when I was growing up. We played baseball till night. We could ride our bikes all over town. I mean, life was so much simpler. And our grandkids, they're not allowed to ride their bikes all over town. And they live in Phoenix, in a really nice area north of town up by Cave Creek, where it's probably one of the most safest places. But so there's a lot. We only have to communicate 3 or 4 things across the state to win. And that's what it takes to win, is clear communication and making a case. Let me give you my last point why I think there's hope for California. When you look at the number of declining states and independents and libertarians and nonpartisan people, who are they? They are people that do not embrace the Democratic Party, nor do they embrace the Republican Party. But those are people up for grabs. And there's more of those than there are Republicans. So if we, again, learn to communicate, I'm going to read what somebody says. Gretchen, post that again. I missed it. Anyway, if we can capture those people if we communicate well, is what I'm saying. So those are just a few of the things that we can do, as well as, we have to fundraise. And one of the things that I had in fundraising is I had 10 years of fundraising, and I was very successful at it. The good news is, for me, my opponent, I don't think, has ever done any fundraising, and it takes a lot of money to run a Republican Party and to try to win races. And I think California, people are going to look at it. Trump came out here 3 times to raise money, but he came out one time to Coachella Valley where 40,000 people came out to see him. He didn't come to raise money. He fought in New York. He fought in California. He did 6 or 7 points better this time around than he did last time around. I am convinced California is going to be in play. People are going to be watching it. And here's another reason why I believe it's in play. Michelle Steele, on the night of her election, she was up 11,000 votes. By the time she lost by about 150 or 500 votes. Same with DeWarty. He was about 5,000 votes up the night of the election, then he ends up losing. Same with Mike Garcia. He was 6,000 votes up, and then he ends up losing. And I want to know why that never happens to the Democrats, where Democrats 10,000 votes up, and then they end up losing. So something doesn't seem reasonable. Common sense will tell you there's something going on. And so I think that's another thing. We've got to get election integrity back. We got to form some lawsuits and get the national party behind us, because here's why. I think California is going to be the key to us keeping the congressional seats. And here's why. We can win most of those seats back. And they say when a president, like if the Republicans win, the next election is when we lose Congress. That has been historically pretty accurate for most of history. So we're all set up to lose, according to history, our congressional seats, and then we'll become the minority party. But I think Trump, he's so proactive. I know, I mean, I believe with all my heart, mind, and soul, he's going to want to play in California, and he's going to want to get those seats back. He's going to want a couple more. So I think he's going to come right. I think he's going to come right through California as one of the ways to keep Congress in our side of the ledger. And so I think there's a lot of hope there. Parents returning to school board meetings, I mentioned that early. That's not a Republican movement. That's a movement we need to jump on. Another thing too, Washington said that in his farewell speech, the centerpiece of the speech, he said, of all the habits and dispositions which lead to political prosperity, morality, and religion are indispensable supports. And that's what he believed kept the country going. So not only we're looking at these key leading indicators that I think Trump's going to play in California next time around. At least I hope he does. He should, because of those congressional seats. Number two, he did a lot better here this time than he did last time. I think the winds at our back, and we picked up what's really interesting. Republicans have not concentrated on this, but we picked up a whole lot of seats in like school board members. Gosh, you guys are too fast putting up your things. I only get half of
We're
it.
gonna
Right.
we're gonna go through and ask you the questions, so you don't have to
Okay.
worry about what's in the chat.
I'm slow. I'm putting on my glasses. Stop.
No,
That's
no,
okay.
this
Okay.
is what Gretchen and Nancy do.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yes.
So anyway, I just think there's opportunities there. And the reason I mentioned about Washington's comment that a success of a nation is morality and religion, very interesting. Right here in Huntington Beach, down the road, down the freeway from us, did you know the largest baptism in the history of America took place in Huntington Beach about 4 months ago? Over 12,000 people, mostly young people, got baptized. And the same thing's happening up and down the state. We've got a 22% increase in Bibles. So, faith and morality really go together. So I look at, trying to read the tea leaves on that happening, on Trump winning by about 6 or 7 points more, and the fact that we're building a bench in some of these neighborhoods that are traditionally Democrat, but we're building them in nonpartisan races. I don't know if you guys know Jan Solis of the Silicon Valley Republican Club. Anyway, I believe they were all from her club. She's now been able to put on 7 of her members on the school board races, nonpartisan races. That's where the Republican Party has not thought strategically and intentionally. We need to be building a bench starting, because we can win. See, that proves to me we have a winning message. We can win on nonpartisan races, okay? And then what happens is those school board people become mayors, then they raise money, they learn how to politic, and then we can move them up to assembly races and then Senate races and then congressional races. And in the meantime, they're putting out a good message. So again, I'm just seeing a lot of key factors that I believe why California has the win on our back. And we've got to seize this opportunity, man. We got Trump working it. And as California goes, so goes the nation. I think there's a lot of hope here. I love my state, best weather, best this, best that. And the only thing bad about it is the politics. And we, the people, have to change that. It's not up to me to do that. It's up to the Constitution. Doesn't start off the politician starts off. We, the people, a government of, by, and for the people. So all of us are responsible for to win our state. If you remember the last paragraph in our Declaration of Independence, I love it. It says this: it's a call to action. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to one another our very lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, which means your sacred honor is given the deepest part of your soul to your country and to California. So I think we do those things. We actively get involved like you guys are doing. I think there's a lot of hope for California. And I'm a pessimist a lot of the times. I have not been this excited ever. Even when I ran, I was hoping I could accomplish some things to start turning around the tide. But I didn't really have expectations that we were going to win. But I'm starting to now, looking at all these things blowing our way. And so I think now is the time you and I, all of us, have to seize the moment, because we've got duty to God, country, and our family and our children's children. And I'll just kind of stop there, because I think I talk too much, but I believe in what I say, and I like answering your questions as long as they're easy questions. Easy questions.
Go, Gretchen.
Okay, nothing but easy questions from
Right,
this
right, right.
group. I've got a question that was sent to me earlier today by somebody you know, Karen Contreras. So I'm going to ask that one first. She's not able to be with us tonight because she's got something else that came up. But so her question is with the recent state and national election results, it appears similar to what you were saying. It appears that voters preferred the conservative message. How will you, as the CAGOP chairman, capitalize on those sentiments to expand the party coffers and support our candidates? And what
Well,
do you think? This is part B. what do you think our state candidates need from the GOP to win their seats in the next election?
Okay, so that's going to require kind of a long answer, and I apologize. I can get winded. So
That's
if
all right.
you guys,
We have 20 minutes.
okay, if you get tired, just say Morrell.
For more than one question, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Karen Contreras, I love her. She's a sweetheart if you know her.
Oh, we do. She's on our board.
And so is Vicki Graham.
Yes.
Who's on our call. Okay, so a couple of things. I'll try to talk quick because there's a lot there. First of all, we have to start by training candidates because I wanted to work with candidates, so I put my name out there, any candidate who needs help, and I was surprised how little they knew. One candidate, I said, if you don't, he says he doesn't have any money. I said, well, then the most important thing is there's 100 pieces of the puzzle. But number one is you better knock doors, thousands of them. And he says, we're starting this weekend. And it was 3 weeks out from the election. And I thought, oh my gosh. When I won mine, because I didn't have money, I was going against the mayor in the largest city in the district. He was a doctor. He had the physicians, the hospitals with him, the insurance companies, the nurses, everybody. I knocked doors. I put up signs, and I started knocking doors 14 months out, not 3 weeks out, 14 months out. I started in Grand Terrace, which on purpose, because that had the most hills, and it was on a day that was 89 degrees. And I walked for 6 hours, and I thought, if I can walk hills for 6 hours in 89-degree heat, the rest is going to be history, because that was in late September, and I knew it was going to get cooler. So anyway, you got to work. So that candidate, I knew he was going to lose. And then I had another candidate, and he was Armenian, and he was running for Congress. And I asked him basic questions. How many people are in your congressional district? He said, I don't know. And I said, well, it's all a numbers game. You should know that if you're running for Congress, 750,000. How many votes do you think you'll need is required for this election? And he didn't know. I said, probably around 275,000. And so you got to get 50% plus one vote. Walk me through how you're going to get those votes. And he says, well, I'm Armenian, and the community is a big Armenian community. I said, but most of your Armenians are Democrats and you're Republican. And he says, I think they're going to vote when they see my name. And so I dropped him too, because I just thought, this is crazy. But then the other side, there was other people. It was a breath of fresh air. Elizabeth Alders, if you've heard of her. Oh, she was awesome. She came to me, hey, will you help me, Senator Morrell? And and the election was about 6 months away, and I'm thinking, 6 months. But and I said, you're kind of starting kind of late. She goes, oh, not for 22, for 24. And I said, oh, I love you. I said, because you're starting 2.5 years out. And, she got 41% of the vote. She's within striking distance next time around. So anyway, those were the candidates that I needed to work with. But to answer your question, we've got to train our candidates. And when I was in the Senate, I was asked to go recruit candidates in different districts other than my own, people I didn't know. And so this time around, I'm thinking, I want to depend on some of these clubs. I want to go to these clubs and say, here's 10 people or 7, whatever. Here's 7 things that a candidate has to have to win. If they don't have them, don't send them to me. But you guys know this area better. Find those people who are honest, ethical, moral, willing to work hard, willing to have principles, willing to know a few things, and then check the boxes. And then let's try to recruit those people. And then what I'll do is get them and I'll train them on what they need to do to win. And so that way, it doesn't mean they're all going to win, but at least we're giving them training, which the Republican Party, I don't think did that, at least some of the ones I talked to. But also, we just can't, we've got to have our clubs working together with the party to help us recruit good people. I love the model that Jan Soleil's doing up in the Silicon Valley, the devil of California. And she's got 7 of her club members won school board races. So what a breath of fresh air. So that's something that we have to do. What was the other part of the question?
Well, she wanted to know if when you become chair of the California GOP, how will you, what will you do to get the GOP to better support the people that we do have running?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I gave you half of the equation of that. The other half of the equation, we've got to outline. When I said this in the very beginning, communication is the key. When Joni and I were getting married, our pastor made us read a book Communication, the key to your marriage. It's key to anything. As I said, Reagan was a great communicator. And so we've got to communicate, and we've got to have like goals that these new people, they've got to clearly understand. We got to be honest, ethical, and moral with them and say, here's goals you've got to reach. This is how many phone calls, and we're going to verify these things, how many signs you get put up. You need to give us the addresses. We're going to do polling on this, and then you're going to have to raise so much money. And as you reach those things, then as long as we've got the money, because I understand they're going to leave me a short runway with money, the party, which isn't fun. You know, that's pretty bad, to be honest with you. But anyway, short runway, hopefully I can get in there and raise some money quickly. And then what's there, then we will allot a certain amount at different times. We're not going to do like throw $100 or $500 to someone at the end of their election. We're going to monitor their progress. We're going to give them goals to reach. And as they reach those things, then we want to be able to plug them in, because we want to run this like a science to actually win. You know, so we will help those people that are doing the right things and that have a chance to win. So that is fair, because they've got to step up. And if they step up, then I believe it's our duty to step up for them. And I'm looking for clubs like yours to help us recruit good people, you know, who are talented and who are, you know, they're winners, they're fighters. They want to engage, and they've got to have some successful background before they run. They have to have accomplished something that is worthy, because they're not going to know how to get elected if they haven't done that. So we've got to put some criteria that they need to meet.
Very good.
Nancy, do you want to take one of the next questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
there is one here, and I just want to say, Senator, that I am impressed. You really are a very flexible trooper, or you're just used to blackouts. So, this one's from Christy Russell, and she asked, do you believe the Bank Your Vote campaign lost Michelle Steele her office?
You know, I don't know. I have a whole different opinion that could get me in a whole lot of trouble. I said it earlier. I do think there's fraud. I don't know why the Democrats don't have candidates that are 10,000 votes ahead at the end of the night, and then they end up losing. It only seems to happen to us Republicans. So, you know, back in COVID, I was nervous when COVID came out. I didn't trust our government, but I wasn't sure what to do, because all the stuff was kind of freaky, you know. So we went out to dinner one night, Joni and me, to meet 6 of our friends. So there was 8 of us. And we're standing outside this restaurant. It was cold, it was winter, but the air was fresh, but cold. And we had our mask on, because the sign said outside, wear a mask and then stay 6 feet apart. So we're outside, 8 of us, wearing our masks, standing 6 feet apart in the cool weather. And then we go inside and we sit 12 inches apart in the warm weather. And now we can take off our mask and talk and eat. That's the night I decided we've been set up. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a scientist, right? Or a doctor, but I have a little bit of common sense. There's something wrong with that. And so the same thing with, I think, these elections. I don't know why we're losing. I think something's up. I've seen things where, you know, there was a small little church. I think it was in Santa Ana, and they had 62 registered voters at that place. Another friend of mine in San Bernardino found 23 people that supposedly live in the same house that are registered. So we've got to get voter rolls cleaned up. We need election integrity. We need ballots. I don't know if you heard, Trump said this, I think it was, that, no, I take that back. It was on the History Channel. And they were talking about the 3 biggest guys that got the country started: Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and I think it was DuPont. And so anyway, in 1896, I think it was, they supported McKinley for president, because the other guy, the Democrat, I forgot what his name was, he wanted to stop these big corporations. He wanted to cut them down so they weren't so powerful, right? And so those 3 entrepreneurs went for McKinley. And I was just watching this a month ago. And in fact, it was old. It must have been 20 years old because they even had Trump on there interviewing him, and he was a lot younger. And so anyway, here's what the program said. In 1896, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, and DuPont were nervous for the vote coming in from all across the country. And from the rural areas, it took up to 20 hours to get all those votes from all over the United States in 1896 back to Washington, D.C. And so they were nervous for 20 hours. Think about that. They're still counting votes in different states. Do you realize that? And we have computers. So ballots, counting them and getting them done, and an ID. If they could do that from all around the country in 1896, of course, we didn't, have California probably much. But anyway, they telegraphed their votes. But anyway, it took 20 hours to get all the votes counted across the United States, and we didn't have computers there. So something's up. Next thing on this vote is, and I don't know if Michelle still did this, but this is what I saw, and I'm going to tell you about Sacramento so you get an idea. When you go up Sacramento, that old Capitol is beautiful. The marble floors are shiny. You walk through there, people are calling me senator. You know what? It really inflated my ego. But I was getting a little bit older, so I've been slapped down enough that, I've got a little grasp on that kind of stuff. And people really get enamored with being up at that Capitol. It's such a beautiful building. You feel like you got power. The lobbyists are calling you, sir. Everybody's your friend until you lose an election. But the thing is I noticed a lot of these people forgot to work their districts, And again, I'm not saying I don't know what Michelle did, but one of the things I knew it was not going to be the lobbyists or my fellow Republicans getting me elected. I knew it was going to be the people. So I would get back to my district, and I would work between 9 and 13 functions I would go to every weekend because I wanted to keep in contact with the people. We did mailings, we did programs, we did women of distinction for nominating 3 women for each city. I never had any of those Democratic women ever come out against me. I was the only guy to get the most conservative lifetime rating for the American Conservative Union one year. And the same year, I got the Black Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. No other Republican did that. And the only reason about the Black Chamber of Commerce, I never talked politics. I went to their meetings, and when they were honoring people like college students, I would show up with certificate of recognitions. I'd call ahead of time, and I would present those things. And that was what won them over. I never talked politics with them, only Republican that they had ever endorsed up to then. And it was just a matter of showing up there and bringing certificates whenever they had their college kids. So it taught me a lesson. And then what happens, the Democrats, here's what they do. They are constantly taking polls. They're seeing if you have weakness to see, because they're going to spend their money. Anytime they're spending a lot of money on people, they believe they can win that seat. And so what happens is you got to keep the evil away. And the way to do that is you got to work your district. And so when I did that, I just want you to know, I started winning every time I had another election. I would win by larger and larger margins. Even to one point, I think I won by 10.5 points, and I was in a slightly Democratic district. And I still won by a pretty heavy margin. So it was just connecting with the people and working your district. So I think a lot, and the reason why is I've heard some of the people who did lose races, and Michelle was not one of them because I think she works hard, but there was other ones. People communicated to me that once this person got to DC, they rarely came back to work their district. So there's a lot of things we can do a lot better. Once you get elected, you should always be elected again, unless if they redraw your district to a point where it's bad. But we have to get that back too. We're going to have to do a lawsuit on that next time the census comes around, because if you see the way they draw the districts, it's evil, it's wrong, and they do it on purpose. And when my day came up for my constituents to advocate for my district at the last census, they did it on a Sunday afternoon, 3:00 in the afternoon on Father's Day. You tell me how many people want to show up on Father's Day. It's all calculated. So anyway, sorry, Guys, I hope I'm not giving you too much information. If I am, tell me to knock it off and give me another question.
Very good.
We have a couple more questions for you. You gonna take one, Nancy, or do you want me to take one?
Why don't you take the next one?
Okay, Leslie Scacchetti is asking, what, as a California GOP chair, what can you do about election integrity?
Well, I think we here's where we start. We start with every Republican group. Here's how you want to strategy. Here, you probably already do this, but you need to have structure. People need a purpose. When I was at Hillsdale, what I did, being the president of that parents association, I asked the college, what are the 5 things you guys need? And I told you one earlier was student retention, fundraising. There was 5 of them. So I laid that out on the chalkboard, and I said, we need a committeeman and a committee chairperson to take one of these events. And then I need you parents to sign up for 2 of these things. And if you're not doing your job, don't get mad at me, but I'm going to ask you to step down and we'll find someone else. This is serious. We got to help our college. And so I wish every club would see, not everybody wants to put up signs. Not everybody wants to knock doors. Not everybody wants to do election integrity. But I would like to have every club, if they'll do it, adopt a candidate, right? Help us look for a candidate, adopt that person. Second of all, whoever gets turned on by working election integrity, they can work election integrity. The third thing is whoever wants to get out and knock doors and make phone calls. Not everybody wants to knock doors and make phone calls, but are people in your group that would do that rather than election integrity. And then also, I even think having a PR person at the door as you're having people come in. And I think I can even show Republican clubs how to increase their membership, because I used to be in sales and marketing, and I develop a flyer that I think will work and who they should send it to. But I can share that with you later. And so I think the thing is when you do those things, people who want to get involved, when they're like, you don't want it to be for the whole club, but those people who want to say, yeah, I want to do election integrity, that means they've got skin in the game. They want to do that. So that's what we've got to do to get us through. And in the meantime, what I'm researching is there's got to be a way that we've got to be able to find an attorney or some law firm that's going to do a case. We need to sue and get our paper ballots back. We need to do a lawsuit, because if computers can't do it, and we've got to get voter ID back. My gosh, look, you can make the case. You go to, I just went to pick up a prescription today. The guy made me show my ID. I went and did a credit card place. And, I have to show a credit card. I go to the bank. They want my ID. They won't just give me the money. And they see me. They know who I am. They call me Mike when I walk in, but they always look at the ID. My goodness gracious, you need an ID to drive. And one of the most important things in life is our right to have freedom and vote. And the evil, see, this is a battle between heaven and hell, ladies. And they're evil. They want to play it. And that's how they cheat, because they do not want election integrity. They cry the blues. And by the way, Karl Marx in Marxism said, and this is why we have to fight back and not be nervous. Marx said to his fellow communists, Marxists, that when it comes to your opposition, accuse them of the very things that you're doing. So that's why they're going to say, we don't trust, we're anti this, we're anti minorities. No, you know what? We're going to stick to it. You guys are the crooks. What's wrong with showing your ID? You do it at the bank, you do it when you get a ticket, you do it here, there, and everywhere. We want election integrity. And if I can raise enough money and get an attorney firm to do it, we need to sue. And Lord willing, it can go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then they may not pass it on, but then we'll appeal to the Supreme Court. And I think they're ready for a case like that, I hope. Next question.
Okay, I like a lot of what you're talking about there. Those are things that hit home with me as well. What would be your first act of business as chairperson?
That's a good question. I have not thought about that. Well, I actually have. I want to bring in every staff person and interview them. I want to know what their duties are, what their responsibilities are. I want to know if they measure their results, especially on the people that do fundraising, I hear they pay them a lot. If you've got someone, if they're, and I don't know how much they're paying them, but let's say 50 grand a year, and that person brings in $120,000 of donations, that person probably under me may not have a job for very long. You know, we need to get home run hitters, right? And so everybody's got to be measured. You got to be able to know how to measure. And one thing, you got to have tracking systems. That's where my business was when I had my mortgage companies. I would track how many phone calls came in and where they came in from. And then that way I would put my money, my budget to where the most phone calls were coming in. And then the second most, I put the second most amount of money there. And then whenever my sales reps got up calls, they had to fill out a sheet, send them to the receptionist, and then she would record how many of those calls that person got for the month and how many did they put in the escrow, you know? And then you can see, like I had a guy named Dan that only converted 19% of his calls, and I had a guy named Dennis who converted 38% of his calls. So who would you rather have get in the phone? Dennis, who converts 38%, or poor Dan who only did 19? So when Dennis got busy, we gave Dan some, but we also started improving Dan and helping him get better at how to close transactions. But if he hadn't gotten better, I would have let him go. So you have to have ways of measuring people to be successful. And then another thing too is we measured what was the average dollar amount that they brought in on commissions, you know, and so we saw who the home run hitters were. And then of course you want to focus effort there, and then you want to help the ones who are weak to get better. And then when it goes to your processors, they had to, you know, once they got an escrow, I need to see how many days they took to close that escrow. And, you know, why is this young lady taking 38 days to fund the loan and this person's at 62 days consistently? That happens once in a while. So you got to get the one at 62 down to 38. And if she can't get there, it's because she has bad work habits. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is number one, find out where they're coming from. And then I've got to develop right away, which I think will be easy for me to do because I've had experience. I've got to put together a matrix on how to measure each of their jobs. Everyone gets measured, even the receptionist, you know, how many calls she gets. Everyone's got to get measured. Everyone's got to get rated. They've got to see how they're being measured there. And there's going to be a standard they have to live up to. And we keep track of all those things. And I love doing that kind of stuff because it helps me guide the ship, you know, and I think that'll bring success. And believe it or not, most companies do not do things like that I've done in the past, but it's worked very, very well.
We are going to have to wrap this up. So
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we covered most of the questions. There were some variations of similar questions, but I think we covered just about everything there. So Senator, I want to thank you so much for your time, for joining us this evening. And you gave us a lot to think about. You covered a lot of ground. So thank you very, very much for letting us get to know you.
Well, I would appreciate your endorsement. That'd be first. The second thing too, let me give you my website, or do you guys have it there?
Nope, you go ahead and tell us and I will put it in the chat.
Yeah, Senator Mike Morrell.
Is it spelled out, Senator?
Yes, Senator Mike Morrell. Morrell spelled Morrell. 4, and the 4 is the number 4. Chair. Senator Mike Morrell, number 4, chair.com. And you can go in there if you want to leave me a message that you endorse me. I would be grateful. There's other stuff you can read up on me. If you want to be on our emailing list, that would be fun because I just wrote an op-ed yesterday that I got out. And I think it's pretty good. I'll send it to you, Gretchen, if you want to distribute it to your folks.
Great. Thank you. We will.
Yeah. And then let me know if you endorse me, and and if you want to do a contribution, that's fine too.
Okay. Thank you so much. We wish you the best of luck. And we will see you in Sacramento, if not at some other place in between.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very,
Bye-bye.
very much.